Hey, Randy,
Hello. What's up, Dane?
how's my big old teddy bear doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, buddy.
Goodness gracious, about to show up late. 129. Recording has started. JT is off this week. I am off mute. I do have the document open. I should share my screen. Might give it another 30 seconds. We got 16 that I see on the line, 17. How's everyone doing?
Wonderful.
This is part 3, so this is pretty exhaustive.
Outstanding.
Good, Perry. Does
Hope
anyone
everyone's
remember
doing
where
well.
we left off? I did not look at the past recording. I think it's D5, but does anyone have any recollection?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think we made it to the E's. But I'm going to jump in and get started. We'll get through these, is my hope. For anyone listening, I think we should have some time at the end of this one. There's not that many left. If anyone has some that they would like to circle back and we put a little bit more energy into, I'm happy to do that. If you have a QC report that you want to get fired up on your device and I stop sharing and you share yours, I love looking at real data. This is real data, but it's a little dated, so I'm happy to do that. D5, exterior component types, and then section name and quantity. I do think we went over this. Nancy may have been the one to call out. So it's looking for more than just where the unit of measure is each and the quantity is 1. There is a little more logic to that. I know that we looked at gutters and downspouts. The unit of measure is lineal foot, and I'm pretty sure that I put in like 12 lineal feet. So there's some basic logic that says the chances that this is on one side of the building is high. So let's hit it and just have a chance to look at the section name, because if it's on one side of the building, cardinal direction should apply. And I'll give pause for a couple seconds. If I don't hear anybody trip in, I think we're good with D5. D6, number of floors in the bread file, sectioning by floor, building component, yes or no. That's back to the catalog. We have a column that says building component, yes or no. It's critical that the number of floors in your bread file is accurate. So in this case, it's pretty obvious that the sectioning is all 1FL, 2FL. So the problem here is to go back in that bread file. I have a random one up. Ensure that the number of floors for that record would get updated from 1 to 2, save it. That way, when you run your data through the QC tool, it's going to give you legitimate hits, and then ensure that sectioning by floor is carried through correctly. D7 is more of that building component. So where D6 is looking for 1FL, 2FL, D7 is not looking for 1FL, 2FL, or any form of FL in the section name. They're building components. So fire devices, floor drains should not be by floor. Traditionally, there are exceptions to that rule. When there are, maybe it's appropriate. In that case, it's going to be considered a false hit if it's critical to know what floor maybe devices on the 3rd floor were replaced and not the other 2. I would say utilize floor and then just consider it a false hit in that case. This is not following the 1FL, 2FL per Jacobs guidance, but there is FL in the section name, which is why I'm pretty sure that we're seeing these hits for D7 in this data set. Still good? D8, I may be recapping a couple of these. I struggled with commons and quarters, D8, and was it D5? I didn't like that our stored procedure names are a little bit out of sequence. They're not side by side, but based on a CAT code, it's a short list. We know what buildings should be sectioned out by commons and quarters, and D8 is intended to be ensuring that we follow that guidance. So it's looking for C30 system, D2010 material category, so not D10, not D2020 or 2030, specifically plumbing fixtures, and then specifically D502002. Now that's exterior. No, it's what's D502002? It's lighting, but that category has both interior and exterior lights, at which point the logic has to get into what that component type, and if it can identify it as exterior lighting, then obviously it's not hitting those component types. It's truly hitting interior lights and expecting commons and quarters in the section name. D9, that's duplicate sectioning, isn't it? I'm going to skip over this one, hide it. We will circle back to this one. I'm now curious. I want to look. Obviously, we had a DM2, but not a DM1 hit. So I wanted to see. I didn't want to skip over one. Okay, so DM1 does exist. Section name not capitalized is pretty straightforward. We all use the updater tool, so this is pretty much a non-starter. That's why we do not see it. However, as we start encountering more and more legacy data and do reviews before any of us ever touch it, it is important to have the QC check in place so that we can see where we can easily start capitalizing section names and cleaning up data to the current standard. So that's DM1. DM2 has been expanded a little bit. It's a discussion about the building comment. It's really hard when everyone's sent out as part of a team. Only one person is responsible for the building comment. You know, we've gone through some growing pains on everyone providing comments to back to one person to, it's really hard to QC it until QCM gets all files and we merge them together. So it's a work in progress. Understand it's a conversation more than it's a flag. There are some condition formats built in. That's why you see the yellow and the greens. They may need to be re-reviewed. But traditionally, if someone put addition anywhere in the building comment, it was looking at section names within that building, that data set, to see if the word addition was used. If so, we can read the comment. We can see that there are 10 sections of addition. At a glance, that looks fine. The red flag would be when building comment says there's an addition, and yet none of the section names allude to the fact that there's an addition, which is really sections of a different age, a different year. We've since expanded on it. We're now looking at a total count of sections as just a point of reference. Missing systems alignment, we still work really hard to get missing systems right. So as an assessor or team lead, when you submit it and we get to look at the entire data set, we're looking at it and the QC tool is populating what the data is telling us. So Steve, to use you as an example in this one, the comment was A20, D10, E10, but according to the data, C20 stairs was also not in the data. So we validate it and then we go in and make sure that the building comment gets updated. C20 was missed. That's the intent. For Diana's here, I mean, this looks like this was probably a copy paste. It was the start, missing systems, to go back later and delete out and update it. So the tool's going to hit it. This is purely an eyes on to look at it, verify it, update it, and move on is what this is.
I don't think there is an A30, right?
Do you see A30?
Right there, down at the bottom.
You are correct. But it got built in. There is no A30.
So what it's looking for is anything that okay, it's typing it, and then once this, I got you. But they're not merged yet when we put our stuff up there, so it's not till you guys see it, and then you know if everything's there or not.
Correct.
Yep.
So this is flagging more so because of the contradiction and missing systems. If it's all aligning, then it's not going to produce a hit here. So I do think it's still possible to get a clean DM2 hit at some point in time to clear out. As I'm looking at this with everyone, I'm reading missing systems. It's enforcing formatting, which is comma space, not accidental periods, not a E10 period at the end. I probably need to do more testing, but I'm pretty sure that it's also hitting N/A if that is a response to any of the parts to a building comment. So I would flag renovation dates NA, areas not assessed NA, other NA. Per Jacob's guidance, it should be yes, no, or none. And I'm pretty sure this is enforcing that. The description at the top could just use updated so that everyone knows that in its completeness. Any questions there? Okay. E's really get into section details, so architects can go grab some water if they want, or we can just continue working through them. Different perspectives. I would say that we've gone and tried to marry up a couple of these. Section detail hits could probably use some more work, but specific to this one, QC check reviews the year installed, not aligning with the section year. So here we have a section year, which is the inventory. And then you have within section details, the fact that the date installed was left blank in this case. That's what this is hitting. If it was the wrong date, it's going to hit it. And it's not for us to auto correct it. One is right. And only as the assessor do you know which one. Maybe your focus was you updated details and forgot to circle back and update your section year, or vice versa. I will say, I'm pretty sure, let's say that this central station section details are required, but you did not enter a section detail. It's still going to hit it here because it's expecting one. So it's going to appear as blank whether you created the detail or not. That detail needs created. These data fields need filled out in their entirety. So this is just one opportunity to catch that requirement. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, a lot of these say legacy, so they were sections that hadn't even been addressed. E2, we just skipped over. Eyes on QC procedures, E2. Asset install date is before the building construction year. Very rare that this one hits. I think it's fairly straightforward. That's why it's kind of hard to force in some of these hits. So we'll jump to E3. Grouping. So once again, our component catalog has a column dedicated to grouping if it's allowed. That means can the quantity be greater than one or not? Through this perspective, as we could see, grouping is not okay. This is a garage exhaust system, base 2 and 3. The quantity is 3. Assessor needs to go back, verify if this count is right to break it out. Now, there is an exception to garage exhausts, isn't there? An exception being when it is okay to take a grouping approach. That may be the case here. The logic obviously does not accommodate that. I'd have to go back, read it in the manual, and then go into the data, ensure that that was followed, and then I would just move on. You could consider it a false hit. Are there questions on this one? I wish in some of these cases I had better examples, but this is what the data set gave me to present. Okay. Similar, here's E4, and it's still talking about grouping. So in this case, they're not flagged based on their section quantity, greater than 1, but the number of section details. So when grouping's allowed, the expectation is still only to have one detail. So here, the air curtain's fine, but apparently there are 4 section details. 3 of those need to be deleted. E5, if details are required, then this is saying that the capacity, date installed, and location cannot be NA or left blank. So there at the beginning of the E series, it was focused specifically on date installed. We're turning around, and that was really a conversation between a contradiction and date installed in the section year. This is just saying, hey, these couple fields can never be left blank or NA. There's always a capacity, except for water softener, steam power trap, DDC control panel, fire alarm control panel, lighting control panel. So those 5 exceptions are built into the tool for capacity. And then obviously location. No examples here, but if left blank, it would have produced a flag. This appears that I have some partial condition formats that I could probably expand on. It's probably intended to carry through, and if others found it helpful for columns K and M to also start highlighting for our eyes to pick up on the fields that were left out. In this case, based on the CMC, section details are not required, yet one exists. Details required, no. Once again, sections that had not been addressed, whether that be marked for delete or the data filled out in its entirety. Maybe the details are applicable and it's the wrong component type, so which is the case here because it's D501005. We went from E6 to E8. I'm pretty sure E7 is one that is still in play. Addition install dates cannot match the building year. So if the section name has addition in it and that section year equals the building year, then it's going to produce a flag and it would be showing up as E7. No examples to show. Moving on to E8. That is specifically looking at a capacity, the unit of measure, and trying to enforce some standard. Whether it be capacities left blank, our catalog has what the preferred unit of measure is. So that's really what the tool is looking for within the capacity field. I think there is some judgment. I think in some cases it's okay to overlook and maybe actively ignore what the tool is telling. I mean, it's not perfect. I know that we've talked about water heaters for a while and we'll continue to talk about them. I will say that I'm currently working right now to make this a little bit better. I don't think that it's enforcing the comma space as described correctly, right? So If the preferred unit of measure says gallon, comma, MBH, does that mean both, either or? In this case, I see the attempt for both. What I'm not seeing is there should be a space. So I'm looking to get that updated to catch those type of things. And I'm pretty sure right now I've been testing it. It wants a comma without the space. So if I were to fix the capacity to that format, it would satisfy the tool and this hit would go away.
But that's also in the wrong format. It should be gallon MBH, not MBH gallon.
Yep. I'd have to test it to see if it really cares about what's first and second, but that is a great catch. And the only way that I would know to verify that would be to test it out and try it one way and then try the next, which takes time, right? That's going to throw a flag currently, which is why I think that it's easier to go and change the text up here than it is to get with John and try to tell him that his logic is not enforcing it correctly. So I'm pretty sure that if both are used, it's a comma without any spaces. But these are looking for ton. In this case, it's more information. That's why there is a condition format to highlight this green, but you know what? It's still not perfect. If you're going to do both, I would say stick with the overarching format of delim, separate it with a comma. One last thing to share with everyone. I've been trying to review these. Fractions should not be expressed as 128 or B. I mean, that's so tiny. That's not even worth putting in decimal form. However, what I'm trying to get at, it's not half ton. It should be 0.5 ton. It's not 3/4. It's not 1/4. It's not 1/6. It's 0.16 or 0.167 or 0.17. I hadn't taken it to the 2 or 3 decimal places, consistencies. At times, I think that as a QCM, when we get to look at all the data together and access briefly, you see what it's looking like. The majority wins. If anything is an outlier, we clean that up. But to get in a consistent approach, I say we avoid fractions because a forward slash can be thought of as a delimiter, right, between an ID number, different things. If I had to pick one to continue the conversation, it's been a comma. E9, this is one that Daniel brought up. So it's not an old check. It's fairly new. We put some effort into it, but it could use some more. This may not be on production. Can anyone verify? Have others been seeing E9 or not?
I just ran a report yesterday or day before, and I got a bunch of hits for E9.
Okay, so it is on production. It's not perfect. Don't get bogged down by it. However, in some cases, the idea is that if it's a water heater and it has a serial number, odds are the date manufactured can be found. That is a 9 times out of 10 high success rate. Some have said in logic that if it's square D, this is definitely debatable that you can get a date manufactured. Square D is a pain, but maybe some of these other ones, if we're not saying that the nameplate is not found, then the question is, was it not legible? Was it not there? Or was it? And the date manufactured is just getting populated as 1-1. The intent is not to take hours with this one. It was a check that just got brought into play. I'm sorry that I can't speak. Take a glance. Take a glance.
I had hits for this, and all of them had no serial numbers, but a lot of them were square D, and they were smaller square D panels.
So that's why, right? In one case, I'm telling you, the logic is specific to say water heater and serial number. Can't say the same thing for panel boards. So it's hitting you because of the manufacturer in that case. I could probably elaborate on the description a little bit more. to give more details. I think at the point in time, I just kept it vague intentionally. Considers component type, manufacturer, nameplate data found. So the comment used, serial numbers provided. It's a combination of things, is the intent of E9. QC procedures E9, I also did not provide any more detailed logic. So right now, this is all that's being given to you. If you give me another 6 months, I've always liked the idea of being able to start bringing in some of the Building Intelligence Center data, like the fact that it can tell us that if it's Siemens and if the first 3 digits of a Siemens serial number is ABC, then like someone could go through the pain of having that logic built into the tool. Not a priority, but always a possibility. If anything, E9 is going to catch 1 or 2. Otherwise, as an assessor, you're rolling on. As QCMs, rolling on. EM1, I can't really speak to it. I don't see a lot of data with R22. I know that it comes up in conversation quite a bit as far as what is the updater tool doing? Is the QC tool doing it correctly? Obviously, in this case, EM1 did not hit. I'm not going into the eyes on review. I mean, we could to even see if R22 pops anywhere. But the intent of EM1 is to enforce R22 being used correctly. Formatted R22, the equipment type, which as long as you type it in one way and run the updater tool, it's going to put a comma space, put R22 correctly formatted at the end of the equipment type field, right? Our QC checks are then supposed to be looking at inspection data to make sure that your DCR is in alignment with the fact that it's R22. So there are supposed to be a couple things at play to make sure they're being done correctly with R22, EM1 being one of them. Unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of data to show you to test it, to show it off. So I'll move on. EM2, equipment type reference and section details must match the catalog. We have an equipment type 1, 2, and 3. This is something that should hit minimal because as those use the updater tool when it's working correctly, is once you choose the right component type, it's going to put it in there and you're going to move on. I know that we've all gone through some pains of FACP, maybe switchboard, switch gear, right? There's some that we're forcing you to put in something. So if you left a fire alarm control panel blank, the tool is not going to just auto-populate fire alarm control panel. You have to put, what is it, FP, mass, or combo to have it fill in the rest of that text. That is one component type that's being used for 3 different things. And then obviously you have all the other stuff, whether it be E109090, D501090, which is TVSS. Some of those you just have to type in, at which point when we provide the example in the component catalog, which is equipment type 1, 2, and 3, I mean, it's really just an opportunity to try to test and make sure that, hey, if someone is doing a surge protector, they just put it in as TVSS and not surge protector, surge suppressor, surge protection device. Like, it's going to catch those with the focus being a consistent product. Fairly straightforward. Obviously, if it's left blank, right? In this case, we're seeing that it's utility set, but we're saying that it should be a differentiator, SWSI versus DWDI. So if left blank, you know, my question, did the updater tool do this? Does our guidance say that you need to put SWSI or DWDI? I'm thinking that if left blank, it's assuming SWSI and you only have to put double wall when that's the case. So some of these beg more questions, more rabbit holes, or a deeper hole to get into. We work really hard to support, make sure that it's right. But as an assessor, if you're getting this hit, I would tell you if the updater tool's not fixing it, the idea is you would just go into your equipment type, put comma space SWSI, save it, and move on. The next time you run the check, this should go away. When you submit it, when QC sees it, the hit doesn't even pop. Silence, moving on.
Trevor, I got something.
Yes.
So if there's legacy data and it has the equipment type incorrectly written in there, I believe you have to delete it in order for the updater tool to fill in the correct equipment type. It won't automatically switch it if something's already typed there.
It won't. But why do you delete it? Really what you're doing is you have to change something in the details and save it. Access has to log that you've made an update, right? A bread status of you. You don't have to delete the equipment type field, I don't think. You could have updated an ID number or made some other fix in the details and hit save, at which point in Access, there's a bread status of you. When you run the updater tool, even if there is text in there, it will find it and replace it.
Okay.
But that's getting into some details, and for everyone, it's just easier to say delete it out. Then you safely know that when you run the updater tool, it's going to replace it. I think that's easier to instruct than just the idea that the updater tool is really just looking for a status to say that you touched it, at which point it'll replace it. So we went from 2 to 6. I'm just looking at the QC procedures. It does not appear we have a 3 or a 4. Don't ask me why. But they've been skipped for quite some time. EM5 section details are not capitalized. This is very similar to the section name not being capitalized. The updater tool's fixing that for us if it does exist, but that's the safety net with EM5. If it's not capitalized, it should be producing a hit here. EM6. So instead of looking at 2 or 3 fields specifically, like a date installed being blank or capacity and date installed and location being blank, this is now taken and building upon that even more so. It's looking for any blank. Well, originally it's looking for consistency. So in/A, it's going to hit. None, it's going to hit. No, it's going to hit. But at the same time, I've been muddying the waters and it's going to hit blanks in equipment type fields or equipment makes, date manufactured, control type, like any one of the details that is required, it needs to be filled out. Some of you did share recently that our logic was too loose, so it was producing some false hits. And what I mean by that is that no is those 2 characters are in north. They're also in canopy. So if someone was using the location north, it was hitting it, and it was because of that. So I went back to John and asked him to get a little more stringent and ensure that we're not just looking for 2 characters within any type of string, but we are looking for those specific words.
Yeah, I got a hit because I had combo FACP mask notification panel.
Thank you. That's a third one, notification.
And equipment type.
My hope is
Yeah.
that that has since been fixed, but if it has not, please keep bringing it up to me. It might also be something that we it's been done in test and we're still waiting that week or 2 that it takes for the programmers to then push it to production.
Okay,
But I do want
this
everyone to
week.
know. Okay. I do want everyone to know that we have been working to try to make that better. That could be one that got missed. Yeah, I think I appreciate that, Rand. I think the one step further, if Justin is on the line. Actually, I see that he's away, but every few months there's another adjustment to the updater tool. I think that if this is not built into that tool, that it's a good candidate, right, to find the N/A and the nuns and just change it to NA. And maybe it's already doing that. So those become a moot point. And maybe this check is meant more as we see legacy data and we're not trying to touch everything, right? I can't speak to if the updater tool is doing it or not, but it's definitely within its capability. I know that. This does produce false hits from time to time. I know that people have shown me pictures, especially of larger electrical equipment where the phenolic tag itself says left and right and things like that. But generally speaking, we're trying to ensure that the ID number fields are being input with legitimate tag information and not what has been done in the past by other contractors and just trying to create unique section names. And that's spatial information, left, right, up, down, and an ID number field.
While you're talking about it, I got a hit because my tag said lighting new locker room, and it wanted me to change that room to RM. That's back in A9, but it's sort of the same thing.
Yep.
So it's sort of in the right side of the space that I had room, not on the left side.
Good to know. And I'm hoping that you left it as is, right?
I did leave it as is.
Yeah. Right. The tool's not perfect. The logic was to look for room spelled out anywhere and flag it. To make those judgment calls, consider it a false hit, move on as the right answer. I like the feedback because the next step would be to go back to John and say, hey, can you look at this delimiter that has grown to have so much importance, right? To exclude things to the right of a space dash space. We're doing it in other cases. It just means we continue to grow, refine. We fix one thing and I'll break another. So
Whack-a-mole.
Yep. For this though, I think we've done pretty well with EM7. That's the intent of the hit. That's why it's there, the check. The rest of these are now F series. They're going to go really quick. It's all driven by photos in the right spot. F1, building photos. That's either team lead, that's architect, that it means more once a QCM has a merged file and it continues to come through. Obviously, through this perspective, what we're looking for, maybe the building comment says that this place was demolished. Okay, that makes sense, right? But it was in our contract, it's in our data set. Has the building comment been updated? Somebody might say, okay, it's demoed, but where's the photo to show the bare lot? How recent was it? I don't know. That'd be one way to satisfy the tool. I'm not endorsing that. I'm just sharing that you go to this sheet, we can look at a comment, we can see why a photo may or may not. Obviously, if the photo was missed, we need to get one attached. Inspection images is what I'm reading here, right? There's a lot of text for me to see inspection image. So a lot of information in this sheet. Is it a recent inspection or not? In some cases here, you'd be applying filters. Obviously, this is legacy. If I'm seeing hits here, why is it marked? Why is it not marked for delete? Things like that. Most of these should still be satisfied. Did they accidentally put a comment in the wrong spot? That's why I think the section comment is really just here as a reference. Right here it says not found. I mean, the section names are still review, not delete. So some of these, we glance at it, we move on. If I see that there's an inventory photo, but no inspection, but it was downgraded, okay, as a QCM, can I find that photo? And do I have the information that I need? Can I get a photo put as the inspection on behalf of the assessor and move on? Is this legacy data and the photo was attached at the section detail level? Is it a photo that I can use that just needs to be remapped? Or do I have something that's downgraded and I have no photos anywhere that you need to go back to an assessor and try to figure out how to get a photo to meet the requirement? Obviously, we can see that it kind of gets tricky, right? This is a lot of 2018. It is looking at what the most recent what is the latest inspection event in the history. In this case, it's 2018. As soon as someone goes and puts a 2024, then it's not even looking at the 2018. We don't have to try to satisfy the requirement from that 2018 inspection event. If you're doing reassessments, you're fixing that by providing the new DCR. F3, all about inventory images. In the description here, also photos attached to section details will be flagged here. So as an assessor, even if you're putting the photos in the right spot. So if I'm seeing a 3 and a 2 and a bunch of 1s, however, you had legacy data and you're seeing that's a little massive, right? So if the data sees this and you think that it's right, well, F3 is hitting because it still sees and it does not like. I am doing a really poor job because it sees a section detail photo is what I was trying to convey.
I do not, I don't understand what you're saying there now. And this has to do with legacy data and photos and stuff. Can you go over that one more time?
Yes. So you shouldn't encounter this a whole lot, Nancy, as an architect.
I know, but I'm
because you don't
still-
have details, right?
Oh, okay. This is strictly in section details photos.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. I need to try
Okay.
again. I need to try again. F3 is geared towards inventory photos and their requirements. So is it another, is it unknown, or section details required and a photo is required? They're either missed and you need to add it, the QC check is satisfied, and this goes away. I jumped ahead. A lot of you have experienced legacy data and it becomes harder to satisfy F3. And you're attaching inventory photos, and we're seeing that. I was trying to quickly share that in some cases, if there are still section detail photos present, that is why it's hitting. The QC check does not like seeing the section detail photos. Does that help?
Well, yeah, that, like you said, that doesn't
piece?
affect me. But when you started talking about legacy data and inventory photos, I was, okay, this is strictly in regards to an issue that there are section detail photos and inventory photos, which you're right, that does not affect me. I guess I'm trying to get my, yeah, okay.
We hit this a lot out at Fort Carson, where assessors had inadvertently entered a section detail photo instead of putting it at the inventory level. And a lot of it was on some of the legacy data. So it, if you miss a photo or it's in the wrong place, it's going to hit it. Or you could have them both places because QA would hit us for having photos in section details. So we would have to go in and either move or delete them, depending on whether we needed to keep the photo or not. We have some clients, I think it's DLA, they want all the photos at section details. So we have some assessors that come from one project where they've been entering photos at the detail level. They get on an Army project, they're used to doing it one way and they start putting them in the wrong place. So that's the reason that the check looks for that.
I guess the only thing and the only reason I'm asking, in case you're like, well, why does she care? Because she doesn't do section D, and you're right, I don't. But it's been a while since I did rebaseline, but there are a lot of nuances with doing those. And so when I started to hear this, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So if I want to change an inventory photo or change it, that's not what we're talking about here. It's strictly uh, fine. Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're good.
All it does
Back
is it
back
makes
when
sure,
life, Dean.
it just
What?
makes sure if photo is required, it's there and it's in the right spot and it's not in the wrong spot.
Well, I've
Either or both.
added and changed photos, and I don't think I've had an issue there, but this is a different hit number, obviously. So I was just curious when I started to hear that because it does, I've deleted photos out and added different photos and whatnot in rebaseline or changed all of a sudden it's not a G minus, it's this. And so anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good. Back when life was simple, it was simply, is there an inventory photo? But it has since got complicated. With everything, even this sheet is giving in perspective. Like, I can't speak to why we're looking at inspection photo other than it's just a point of reference. Is the photo in a different spot that could be leveraged? If I'm trying to satisfy this for someone else, is there a photo I can get because it wants an inventory photo? With legacy data, I think for rebaseline, Nancy, like if I was on top of my game, I was running data through the QC check, and if I saw this F3 hit, we have since learned how to remap these photos. So before you as an assessor even sees it, someone else should have moved this to the right spot because you should not, if you're given a file that has no inventory photos and it's littered with detail photos, you should not feel like you're going to be spending hours having to attach new photos. We're all trying to be efficient. You should, at least from this conversation, know there's someone you should reach out to. We should work to get that fixed for everyone. We can get them remapped, right? If we don't know how to do it, we should have identified it. We could have requested to Searle, can you please move these photos before we export the bread file and get them cleaned up on behalf of that client, that site at that point in time? Back to detail photos being moved to the right spot, which is inventory. It hasn't happened yet, but I could see in the future wanting to use F3 to start flagging for excessive photos. So if I see 4, 5, 6, 10 inventory photos, maybe one of these days I want to start flagging that. When ESMS comes out and maybe they give us the ability to manage photos efficiently for them, maybe that becomes part of our practices. Get rid of the fluff because it's tough. Some photos are great, but there can be too many. And then the last thing that I'll say, section comments, I think the only reason it's here in the event that the standard comment, something about secure facility, if that's being used incorrectly, not formatted, maybe there's an allusion to the section comment that answers the question, but there's a formatting issue that's still producing the hit. We clean it up, it's satisfied, we move on. So quite a few different points of reference back to an inventory photo. F4 did not hit. All the Fs are photos. I can't speak really to a broken photo link. It should be few far between. Similarly, attached photo missing from package, F6, exterior photos in bread package. As an assessor, as you come across these, I don't know that there's anything that you can do to fix it. I'm just being honest. As I see these type of hits, it takes me down a rabbit hole. I can fix it, but I tend to have to refresh myself on what I have to do. It requires to get into the bread package, looking at counts within the manifest and the images. Hopefully a lot of that stuff is fixed. From history, I can tell you, I always seem to find one or two of these types of hits on John Harvey's data. And why it was John's, I don't know. I know that he tended to keep his files on OneDrive. So his files were located in one spot that he could access from his laptop or his tablet. And I don't know if having done that in OneDrive, refreshing at just an odd time would break the link. Like, I couldn't replicate it, but it was always something to just monitor. Once again, at the end of the day, are the photos in the right spot? If I have one that's broken, I get it wiped out, we'll replace it, and we just move on. And I hope as assessors, you're not even seeing F5 and F6. So it's really a conversation to be complete with what we're doing here in the QC tool demonstration. We started at 1:30. It is 2:20. I think we're scheduled for 3. Is that right? An hour and a half? Silence? Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
So I'm
Yes.
finishing up. If anyone has, we can go back to D9. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I also, if we want to circle back on any,
I have 2 areas of question, but I'll hold off until somebody else speaks up about something.
and then the last thing, since I did say I wanted to bring this up, I'll do that now. I'll give everyone a few minutes. If you have a QC report that you want to pull up, if you want to go over D9, duplicate sections, which not everyone should be seeing, but it is a check on the testing platform, I'm happy to do it. So this is Alluvial. Everyone that is dragging and dropping their files on either test or production and running the file, that data gets stored on a server. And the programmers have given us some visibility. So it's logging the fact that you have to sign in. Everyone just did it with that whole SAML, which is now why everyone's name is an email address. The file name, when you download, it's tracking when it was run. More importantly, the number of runs. Yes, it's data, so it's how many stored procedures hit. It's not telling us if it's a false hit or if it's A10, which is just a conversation, but what's the hit? What are the number of errors? Someone at one point asked, are the assessors running the updater tool? So when you run the updater, it is now logged into your access file. So, as long as we're seeing that it's being run, I think that's all you could ever want to take away from this Alluvial summary. It's showing a first run date, a last run date. So the data is being monitored. As you can click on any one person's assessor's data, Robert, you ran a file 3 times, all on the 25th, you're cleaning things up. If we're trying to have a conversation or if I'm calling you on it, to see the trend going down, QC hits going down, that's thumbs up, right? These are good things. It's those that like some visual aids. If the trends are going in the other direction, maybe that's a point of conversation. These look great. If this is showing me the very last QC run. So if Robert submits his files, says he's done in the 2 folder, I download, and the first thing that I'm littered with is a bunch of A1 hits. I can come back to Alluvial, see that, yeah, based on his last run, A1 was hitting. So then it's a conversation of, hey, why didn't these get fixed before the file got submitted in the 2 folder? So that's not what I'm showing here, but that's kind of what could be taken away from anyone that's going out to Alluvial QCMs, having a chance to monitor. It doesn't matter if you run 2 times or 20 times. Like, we can look historically, and some of the contractors for Fort Carson, 30, 36, 27 QC runs. That's going above and beyond. It's a little excessive. Let's hope that they're getting it right. Let's hope that they're submitting their files on time. So just as much as number of runs is an extreme, so is just seeing 1 run. If everyone thinks that they can run it once and submit and it's clean, in my position, I can't even do it. So I do question it. And I don't say that for your practice to then turn into making sure that you run it 2 or 3 times. I think it's however many times it takes, and it should be as clean as possible to your understanding of the QC tool, what it's trying to tell you before you're submitting it into the 2 folder for the next part of the process. That's all. So that's Alluvial. Mr. McGarity?
Yeah. So with this alluvial, on average, how often are you seeing the assessors run the QC tool?
How often? That's a good question. So if I just want to click, I had to click to get it resorted. So our most recent runs, which a lot of this I think is live data. We're not a Friday at submission. I mean, 2, 1, 3, 3. There's some ones thrown in there, but I'm anticipating that data is still being processed. 5, 3s, 2s, 4s, 7s. I mean,
Okay. I
a
was just
few is all we
curious.
could ever help for, right?
Right.
I'm not on an active project, meaning I'm not going to be here monitoring to see how it's looking or how I'm feeling about the data as I'm trying to take data that's in a 2 folder, merge it, and then want to proceed forward. Historically, we've all gone through periods of time where it was assessors, please, when you submit data in the 2 folder to also supply your QC report. I was never a fan of that because the last thing I wanted to do was to be looking at an Excel document, right? I want the access files. I want to merge. I want to run my own report to validate and then move forward with, right? The QC report was never submitted with the idea that you're going to provide responses as to why this hit or that hit. I was never using a submitted report for that. The whole idea, I think, there was always to be, why do we see A1 hits? Well, I don't know. The QC report that I ran had no A1 hits, so I don't know where that came from. You know what I'm saying?
So is there a correlation within if you're seeing people, assessors who run the tool more often, is their data cleaner, or is there's really no correlation? You're just kind of looking at it. Um, you're not really looking at the data that in that way.
We have not made that leap yet. It's a good question. I have not tried to correlate it.
Didn't
I don't
Alluvial
know.
show you the number of hits each run?
Well, right now it just shows the latest. So when I click on Brian's run here, it's only going to show me his latest run. Now he ran this one time. So what I'm seeing here is that these 9 stored procedures hit. These were the counts. That's all I'm seeing. If I pick one, I've asked Jerry to fix it. I do not like that it pre-populates. That just gets in my way. Not to put anyone on the spot, right? Here's Adriano. He ran 7 times. So we can scroll and see the first was on 228 so even here, the tool's not perfect. And I want to go back to Jerry. So I don't understand why I see a 228, a 3.3, a 3.4, then back to a 227. It's not sequential. But what is producing here is based on his very last time that he ran it through the tool. Now, he may not have been responsible. This is legacy data, right? So if I'm not deep into this data, I can't speak to, oh, this is a bad thing, because he may not be responsible for any of these A1 hits. Okay. But if it was a clean data set, new assessments, and I'm seeing A1 hits, then that's a red flag. And if an assessor said that they fixed it and submitted, well, they should have run it through you as an assessor should fix your hits, run it through the QC tool again and validate it. That A1 hit, for example, should go away. And that's what's going to show up here before you submit it. It's not good enough to just go change the CMC, save it, say that you're done. You may have put it from something that was not in scope to in scope, but you may not have thought about the 7 other things that became a requirement as soon as you put it in scope, whether that be details, a different equipment type update, forgot to run the updater tool. Like there's so many things to check by change it, save it, run it through the tool and validate that certain hits go away. Is the best conversation I know to have from sharing Alluvial with everyone here. Diana, you did have a question and then I lost you.
Oh, it was just about the uploading the QC report to the file. I remember a few years ago when we were doing the bread training with Dean, he'd send us the QC report and we'd have to either say concur or say, you know, like whether you changed it or something. And I've gotten a few QC hits where like the comments were like, oh, you know, you're missing roof or whatever, or not roof, ceiling finishes or whatever. And which is an easy explanation, I suppose. But, you know, just to kind of avoid maybe that extra check from you guys, if there's, you know, any comments on like why we chose a certain component versus something different. I don't.
So in your example, Dean was supplying a QC report, his markup that everyone was replying to. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this was years ago as well.
Yeah.
So things have
And
changed.
I was commenting just on when everybody submitted their files to the 2 folder that they also supplied a QC report, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's happened at some point. I know I've gotten nosy and dabbled in Elena and Brad's guard project. I know that QC reports seem to get put there, or that's where Brad is putting his QC report out to assessors, right? I guess I'm saying that it can still change from project to project, different requirements, different. We're all slightly different. I'm saying that I don't use QC reports for that. I would say that as soon as you hit that anomaly of you really did not have a roof covering, that you had a deck only, like I'm not looking to get the answer in an Excel document. I would say, why not put that as an inventory comment? Let it reside with that data. Because if I'm going to question it, that means Golden Wolf QA, a client in 3 years could question it. It's not questioning an assessor having done it right. I'm thinking if it was my own data, like I don't want to have to go look at my notes to
Gotcha.
get somebody an answer. So for me, I would tell anyone, like, why not utilize that inventory comment field? Some have adapted to it. Others, you know, still want to say why it's not required. And I get all of it. You know, stairs typically should have railings. Concrete stairs should have railings per all the rules, exterior stairs, right? So some, when that QC check hits, you're missing the complement railing. In some cases, I get comments, no hand railing associated with the stair. That's a conversation for the larger group to say, question, is that value added or not? Are we producing inconsistent products if one person's doing it but nobody else? I see that as value added. If I'm inputting that data, I'm putting that handrail section, that QC check is still going to hit, but right next to it is going to be that section comment to say no hand railing. It wasn't missed.
Where it's
Everyone-
really helpful to have
everyone
those
moves on.
comments is things like, you know, plumbing, piping, hot water piping, duct work, where the quantity falls outside of the range and we get a flag on it, so it doesn't equal within the range of what the formula would provide. And I have a comment that says that the duct work was field measured. You know, something as simple as that. I don't question it anymore after that and let it go, and QA doesn't question it either. So those comments come in handy there. Otherwise, we're probably going to get a question from me to the assessor. Hey, well, did you use the calculator? And then QA is going to come back and question it a second time. So putting that comment in there alleviates both QC and QA questions.
And I've talked with Dean, like, yeah, I see you, Anthony. I even challenged the simple comment that Dean just shared, because it too starts turning into just a standard comment that I don't know how much I gain from it, other than an assessor intentionally having to type something to say that, hey, my quantity was intentional. There's still a balance.
Okay, so just essentially adding the comments in the bread file as opposed to, writing it out on a QC report sort of thing.
That is the direction you would get from me.
Okay.
And there's a balance, right? We've gone way back on complementary sections. It once produced way too many hits. So we pulled back to try to get what are the high probability good hits? What's helping the next person? What's helping the client's data? Like, we're all getting exposed to so much more legacy data that you're having to weed through. Like, what is meant by those breadcrumbs in the 2019 manual? What can you leave behind that's going to help that next person have confidence in your quantity and to be able to move on more efficiently, right? Are they starting from scratch? I'm seeing better products, in my opinion. I think we're producing better products with a little extra in comments here or there, being intentional. In some cases, the hit's legit. Even your response to question why you left something a certain way, if a change is made and it then satisfies the tool, maybe that comment is no longer applicable, right? McGarity?
Yes, I had a comment and a question, I guess. One, so I heard a couple things. Hey, right now the additional comments is not necessarily required. Then I heard, hey, this is what kind of guidance I would give. So what would the team give? Because if you're trying to get move direction of consistency and having everyone do the same thing, what is the guidance for the team to do going forward? Is it a requirement now for them to add those comments? So the QC is getting the same type of information. Is it a requirement that the guidance that you just provided is going to be the same for all QCs? How does that work going forward?
Great questions.
We've
Is it-
handled some of that through the QC process of asking for the comment to be inserted. We could probably do more in our guidance to say when to add a comment, but there's so many different situations that you run into out there. And some of these things are kind of one-offs, like how many times do you have a roof deck that doesn't have a roof covering? It's not very often. So I would think anything that's unusual, the general guidance should be anything that's unusual that is going to create questions. Anything that you can add to clarify it is worthwhile.
So even with that, right? Does everybody understand what I mean, is that a known fact, I guess, in the assessor world, that what is considered unusual? Is that consistent amongst everyone what's going to be considered unusual?
I would think for the majority, like the example I used with the roof covering, I think most structural assessors are going to know that it's unusual not to have a roof covering when you got a deck. But there are other questions that are going to come up. Maybe they don't put a comment, and when we go through QC over time, they start to realize, okay, this is a situation where I should have added a comment that would have kind of headed off any further questions from QC or QA. And for things that happen a lot, like where the quantities that are provided from the formulas don't match, that's something we can probably get in our guidance to say, hey, if you field measured it and it's outside of the calculated values in the formulas, you need to say that it was field measured. And that's the guidance we've been given kind of as we go on a one-on-one. And that's probably one of the more common items. And I know Trevor has had things that have been common on some of the rebaseline stuff that he's had him add comments to cover. a building that doesn't have a permanent foundation. That's another example where you've got some of these buildings that are just sitting in a parking lot that has no foundation. Well, QA is probably going to question that unless we put something in at the building level that said that the building's not sitting on a permanent foundation. So we've been giving that direction kind of as we go. And we're hitting more and more of this odd stuff with some of these small buildings than we used to. We used to never do buildings under 1,000 square feet, but when you start getting in these small buildings, you start hitting some odd stuff.
I think having this conversation in a larger group is a great step in the right direction. And to start talking about it more.
However, at the end, I have one thing I need to cover with the group while we got everybody here.
What else we got? It's an open floor at this point. I've gone through everything. Like I said, there could be a D9 if you had a recent QC report to pull up. Does anyone have? Nancy?
Yeah, so I just had a couple things. I'll try to make it quick. All right, so D9 duplicate sections. This hits on me a lot ever since this showed up. And I just kind of look at it and I don't worry about it because I'm looking at stuff that I've got interior windows for that are aluminum and they're section named correctly, and then and then interior windows steel. So it still throws them up there. So I'm like, okay, my section
do you
names
have a
are right.
QC do you have a QC report to show?
Yep.
Can you
It's
share your
small.
screen? That's fine. Small and simple is great. Are you running the report, or is this one being supplied to you?
No, this is mine.
Okay, well,
this is my own data that I ran. All right, what am I doing here?
In my world, I have to differentiate production and test. I speak to it a lot. That's where I live at. So I'm sorry that I didn't think that D9 was on production. That's why I'm trying to ask for clarity. I did not think all assessors
I got what you're saying.
were getting hit with duplicate sections.
No, this shows up, has been showing up for the last I'm going to say a couple months. Okay. So yeah, it's
not that I've been trying to hide it from anybody. It's just one of those that we've been working on.
Oh yes, you have. I'm sure you have. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So anyway, all right. So there's a D9. Okay. So I've got guardrails and screens in the main bay, and then I've got guardrails and screens that are totally different. They're vehicle crash rail. All right. But then like this, windows and windows. Some are aluminum, some are steel. All right. It just duplicate. It sees this. It sees column E. And if it sees column E more than, or something in there more than once, it puts it in there. And this is the small one. I've had some where there's a lot more than that. I look at this, I make sure that I don't have, I think what I understand, and I get it, is to combine certain things. So you don't end up with spread footings for this at the same age as this or whatnot, that you can combine them. But it's doing the whole thing to where stuff has to be separated. So I do a quick go through on this and I go, okay, well, I'm moving on. Okay.
Right. Real quick. I got a couple comments. One, the tool is not smart enough for Windows to differentiate materials. So that is, in this case, the quote unquote false hit, where we've never complicated the logic to say, nope, this is satisfied, take it away. Okay. This is for everyone to hear as they're seeing this. Two, I don't think D9 should be on production. And I say that because I do not see that this sheet is formatted like all the 70 others. There is no blue column headers. There's no description in the top left.
Oh yeah, there's nothing.
So someone should have reached out, because I'd be going directly to Jerry and say, something is wrong here. Because I know I didn't miss my part. Like, they've gone and made some change, and D9 is acting up for it to be on production. So
I found it under here. I found it under here under translation summary. and I found it like it was a thinking thing about identifying sections that can be combined. And when I read that, I went, oh, okay. Because when I went here, and this was a couple months ago, I'm like, what is the problem? And then I found that, and I was like, okay, so that's maybe it's a work in progress, but it shows up each time. And it may be right about a couple things. It may be.
Yeah, it's a
But
manual. It's a manual check. Can you make
Right.
column L wider? I want to see your comment to your 2 guardrails. So this applies to everyone. This could be a mechanical that has a couple sections. The reason to look at it from this perspective and not the eyes on review, right? The
oh yeah,
column. So yeah, one, it's located in 2 different spots. You're telling me crash rail versus located at a ramp. Well,
this is a whole different. This is a much more expensive. Those are those ones in a production area that
but
you've got there.
according to builder, they don't care. Like
Oh,
it does.
okay.
It does help to drive the. It's really just
Okay.
it's a hypothetical question of does it truly
Right.
belong as a separate section, or does
Right.
builder? We're never going to recommend a new component type. They don't want a light duty and a heavy duty guardrail. So in this theory, it is 2 sections of the same guardrail with the same year 2022 and the same inspection. It gets. Someone else could say, nope, I want 1 section, 260 something. I'm going to mash both of Nancy's comments
Okay.
together. This is vehicle crash rail and rail that's located at the ramp. Like I could say this is a combination of light duty and heavy duty and still build it as a single section.
Okay.
And from McGarity's point, to bring this up to 30 plus people, I don't know that what I'm saying is the right answer. It's a different perspective. Someone should look and read the manual and say that they like one way or the other. Maybe both ways are right. It's a conversation is all that I can have from D9.
Okay. So that was one.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. And
Yep.
the last thing I'll say, the windows, let's say that they were both aluminum -1 and steel -3. And let's say that you gave one a G and you gave the next one a G minus. And that was your reason, or any assessor, for having broken it out. The fact that we have D9 for everyone to see would state that a 1-step difference in DCR does not warrant breaking it out. And we can go back.
Understood. Okay.
So,
yeah.
So those are the things that this check is intended to be able to glance over, but you have to go here and skim through it to see those things for the potentials, or you look at it as you were doing and saying, nope, this was intentional. This is right. I have a comment that explains why I broke it out. To Diana's point, right? Diana, Nancy's answer is here in the data for
Right.
anybody to see.
Right. I put in a comment and a photo with the crash rail. And I figured, well, at that point, when it goes to you all, if you want to throw it together, fine. But to me, it was like a whole different animal cost wise. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is beautiful stuff. And I hope, is this a good conversation for everyone? I saw a thumbs up from Anthony. So I'll let you move on now, Nancy. What was your other?
All right. Well, again, I'm not trying to kill this. No, B5, we've talked about in the past. I've talked to Dean about this, and probably you, Trevor. And I don't put a whole, I glance through this. Yeah. Well, again, we're talking about a ceiling finish. It's plastic covered insulation. It follows the underside of the roof. It's above everything else. So yes, I'm going to have an excess, but I mean, not just in the case where there might be also additional rooms down below that have additional ceilings. In this case, that wasn't the case, but in this case, I've even got noted, I'm following a slope factor to meet the same slope factor that is on the roof. Okay, so we knew it had a 3% slope. I've put that in there, so I did that. It's going to exceed it. I took one look at this and I went, yep, nope, I know what that is. I put an inventory in the inventory comment. Quantity or plastic covered insulation at the underside of the roof includes a 3% slope increase.
Do me a favor.
Yeah.
eyes on review, filter to that building and filter to C3030, please, so everyone can see the sections that you did.
All right, show me how to do that. Eyes on review. Okay.
Yep. Building number, column H, filter in your drop down.
H.
Column H, yep. So deselect. It looks like you may have filters applied.
What
right?
number was that? Oh crap.
I thought it was an odd number.
Oh.
I did not take a snippet. Oh, building name, I'm sorry.
5655.
Yep, 5655. Thank
Yeah,
you,
but see,
ma'am.
this is just my data. You don't have everybody else's here.
That's fine. But this is strictly a ceiling finish. So that was a summation of sections for a conversation. Now I'm going here. I want to see your two sections. So go to the right for me. I'm
Yeah,
looking
see,
at
there
rows
you go.
30. Yep, but go to the right. Got it. So this is important for everyone to see because I've always appreciated and very much value the effort you put into your inventory comments. I'm going to leave that alone and let it go. Now it's 35 square feet over, even with a 5% slope factor.
5%.
The reason why it's hitting a tool is because that's not plastic covered insulated bats.
No, I couldn't remember. Anyway, yeah, I got a bunch of these where they actually slap metal panel on the underside so it wouldn't fall apart on the equipment. So they actually encapsulated the interior of the building. It's not roof deck. It's a ceiling finish on the inside.
Yep. So from where I'm at, we did try to accommodate and look at plastic covered insulated bats separately. So that should have been fixed. So now what I'm seeing is that it wasn't plastic covered, it's metal panel, right?
Right. Okay, gotcha.
I love it. I let it roll on. Now I think I can still argue 35 square feet over, and I would then point at Dean and say, Dean, do you let 35 square feet go, or do you pull it back 35 so it satisfies the tool that it doesn't highlight it red? Like, at what point are we just trying to satisfy the tool versus the fact that there's a ton of effort, you stand by your quantity, you comment to it.
Right. Okay.
Like, Dean?
So what you're saying is maybe the interior guy doesn't need to worry about that stuff and just let if I'm doing interior and exterior, which was not the case here, I'm coordinating with Dio and I know what roof slope he's got, and he's got the same quantity on, well, actually not with this, but with plastic covered insulation a lot of the time. So I don't know.
I'm saying this is a very legitimate hit that you have dotted I's and crossed T's from standing to your quantity to, in this case, an inventory section comment that is not required that you put in there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Okay.
But it was still a legit hit, right?
Yeah.
And this, at least the tool gave you the perspective to slow down and look at B5 or the next person in line doing QC to slow down. And no, they don't care about the ones, but they should slow down and continue to question the ones that are in red. Is it a square foot bust? Is there a square foot discrepancy that we need to continue monitoring to ensure that the building comment states that the building is larger, right? Did Nancy update her building square footage that would have satisfied the tool? All of those little things. McGarity, you're so polite, just keeping your hand up. I don't monitor that closely. What you got?
Yes, I know we're at the end of time, and so the only thing I would just, as a suggestion or just recommendation rather, is I'm looking at here, we've got almost 30 some people on the call, right? And I appreciate the votes who've commented and gave feedback and asked questions, but I know there's other people on this call that have questions or could get opportunity to gain more insight. So I would just encourage, is we have to continue with these types of calls. Don't be afraid to ask your questions or speak up or have your perspective or whatever, because it just helps everyone collectively to work better. Don't sit in silence and not say anything, because again, it shows up later. And as they're moving the direction of using data to track, all that stuff is going to start showing up, right? And then they're going to look back and say, well, why weren't they asking questions? Why weren't they commenting, right? So take this opportunity and use it to your advantage, right? Don't sit back because, well, I might ask something that seeing something I should already know. Who cares, right? Just ask the question or provide your feedback or your perspective. So that's all I wanted to share.
Very kind of you. Dean, we do have 7 minutes. Let's use it. What you got, Dean?
Just wanted to cover, Raph pointed out an instance to me that the Army found where we had a panel, and it looked like what happened is the panel was entered as 1960, I believe, somewhere around there. And then on a reinspection, it looks like they, instead of just changing the date, they determined that the panel was actually 1991. Maybe they got it off of the data plate, or just looking at it, you could tell it wasn't a 1960 panel. It was a fairly new panel. So they determined that the panel was 1990. So the question comes, when do you delete a component and add new, and when do you just change the date? And the only time you would delete it and add new is if it's actually physically been replaced. So if you have a photo and you can tell that it's a different panel board at that point, even though it may be the same 100 amp main lugs panel, but it's a different panel board, it's been replaced, then you would delete the old and you would add a new panel board in. But if you're looking at the photo and the old photo matches exactly what you're seeing, so it's the same panel board, they just put it in under the wrong date, then you just change the date to the correct date and give it a new inspection. You don't delete the old and add new at that point. So just wanted to make sure that that guidance was out there. Is when you delete, the only time you delete is if it's physically been replaced or been removed. And sometimes that can be hard to tell when you don't have photos where you can see, the old entry, like if it's a door or something like that. So you have to use your judgment in some cases, but if you think it's the same item that it was and the date was just entered incorrectly, then fix the date, give it a new inspection and move on. But if you think it's physically been replaced and it's no longer the same thing, it's not the same component, that's when you delete it and add new.
You got a hand?
Yeah, I would like to see that put into the inspector guidance in writing for everybody, because I have received different guidance on that from different people, including project managers.
Yeah, that's why I'm
So-
bringing it up, because I know we talked about it in one of our calls earlier in the week, and not sure we closed the loop on it, but that is the guidance, and you're only going to have it on reinspection, rebaseline, that type of thing. So new inspections is not an issue. But just wanted to clarify that while we had a good group on the call. That's all I got.
Diana?
Yeah, I think that same thing came up on this last QC report that I got this week. Is that the same case for components that are actually older than the date that it had? The guidance I got was, yeah, just change the date, but then I get hits on the inspection being newer, or how is it? The inspection's older than the actual component age or something like that. So if it has an inspection from a timestamp inspection from like 1940, but the component was installed in 1980 because there was some error. So it keeps hitting that. I'm ignoring it, but is that
So-
also the case for?
All right, so
that?
one of the QC checks in the C, right, inspection driven QC checks is about an inspection timeline. It's a tough conversation, right? One element is an install date, which is what Builder generates, and it is a 1/1 section year. And then you have actual inspection events, which is when an inspector came in 2018, 2019, 2021, whatever, actual date inspection event, right? So that check is trying to look at both of those one element as an assessor you can't fix. That's the install date. And to Dean's point, it's the idea that whenever they were there in 2018, 19, whatever, they did not miss that asset. They got it, right? That component type is in the data. We're now going back and you're disagreeing with a date. You can move it backwards, you can move it forward. To Dean's point, photos in a perfect world, you have a photo of that equipment. So you validated that, yep, that is that. You're changing a year. Keeping the integrity of the legacy section versus you can't just take a section and always want to use it. So you can't take that 1940 if there's a 2019 inspection and just say it's 2022. Then you truly have broken the inspection timeline. Does that make sense? And it's not the install date one. It's the fact that it's the tool is telling you that there's a 2019 date. And now you're saying section year is 2022. That obviously must have been replaced. So to Steve's point and the guidance, yes, my brain is, I want to get some visual aids that kind of show an inspection timeline, and the fact that a section year can shift left or right from the data point as you see it in legacy section and when it truly is appropriate of make the adjustment versus this has been replaced. Why are you trying to doctor a section just because it's in the data? Does that help?
But in a lot of cases, it's not. It's very obviously it has not been replaced. Somebody just put the wrong year or took a, by golly, by guess at it, a swag. And then
Yep.
you go out there and you decode the serial number or the model number, or you actually find a date on something, or it's a little bit more obvious to you that it's not a 1921 panel. I mean, a 2021 panel. It's obviously an older panel. So, to Diana's point, it's the right component. You're not going to change the component, and it's very obvious that nobody has changed this. It's original to the building or whatever. So, I guess our question is, do we change that? Just go ahead and change that date. This has been a point of contention. And my thing is I've heard it both ways, and is what you're talking about, where the timeline and this and that, but there is legacy data on that. So I guess that's our point. What do we do when it's very obvious it has not been changed?
You just fix the date and give it a new inspection. Daniel, you got your hand?
Yeah, so just to add on to that, I guess I'm wondering what the extra point of C18 is. I thought the original check was for if the component ended up being newer than an existing DCR, right? So then that would indicate that the component has been replaced, and it would qualify for that component to be deleted and a new one be entered. But now, we are allowed to change the install date forward or backwards if we find better data. But yeah, now we're all getting hit on C18, but we're allowed to do it. So yeah, see what you're showing right now. All those yellow ones are ones that need to be reviewed and corrected or deleted. But all the other ones, those we're not breaking any rules, and it's just coming up over and over again. So I guess I'm asking, can that part be removed from this check, or what was the intention behind that? Because it seems like those aren't valid hits.
All right, so the ones in yellow, the condition format goes back to an assessor, and it's in their wheelhouse to question that. Are we all in agreement there?
Right, because you have now changed the section year to 2022, but there's an actual inspection from 2017. Photos
Right.
show it's the same item, or has it been replaced?
Well,
That makes sense.
Guard photos lacking. Let's say you don't have photos. Like this is back to that timeline. You've broken the timeline, right? Are you, as an assessor, are you putting too much effort in trying to just keep a section that needs to go away? So I guess I need to go back to the larger QC group and ask, does this need to be removed in order to get rid of
Yeah, it would
the
seem
confusion?
helpful.
Because, well, I use it immensely because for all the rebaseline, I'm saying that as a QCM, I need to fix this. I need to go into Access and I need to fix these dates. That's
Right.
what I do. Or if you're not
Can that
comfortable
be
in that position doing it, then I'd say you're supposed to go to SMS and do a ticket and say, please run the script that is going to fix the install dates. We just did an assessment effort and we changed all these section years, and you need to go and correct your inspection data because it does not happen in the roll-up process or any other point in time. And then
right?
I go
And
back to
that's
those
fine.
like
I
graph.
understand that. It's just these are flagging for the assessors to review, and it's coming up over and over again. And there's no error from on their part. There's nothing for them to fix, but they can't clear it.
Just that in
So
yellow. Yeah.
yeah, right. So can we update this or talk about it next week's QC call about removing the checks that aren't in yellow and storing it somewhere else for QC to change an access on the back end? Or is that even something that we want to be doing? Because that is more of a Cerro problem.
I'm open to continuing the conversation.
Yeah,
I never wanted to hide it. I've never wanted there to be two platforms, right? I
right.
don't want there to be an assessor QC report and a QCM assessor report. We're all wanting to look at the same stuff and grow and learn, right? I mean, that's my argument for why I put it into play and I use it as a conversation, or I'm going to interpret this and work on it.
Okay.
And once an assessor sees this a couple of times, my hope is that they gain confidence in it and know that, yes, they need to pay attention to yellow and that the whites are not on them per se.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless they're wanting more of a QC role, right?
Right.
That's their next step.
My worry is that assessors are going to change the install date back, or they will start deleting items that shouldn't be deleted, and we're going to lose legacy data, legacy inspections, whatever. But I've just been amazed by how many times I've heard about this just this week.
And so there's risk. And maybe the description is not good enough, or even if the description is perfect, like maybe it's not the best of checks. So we try, and then we course correct.
But it is.
I've seen problems in both directions where the assessor will go out and there's a panel board looking at the photo. It's obviously been replaced, but instead of deleting it and adding a new one, they just change the date. So it can go wrong in either direction. But
it is an important check because if you have an inspection date of 2017, you can't have an install year of 2022.
Right.
Because obviously something was inspected in 2017. So that should prod you while you're out there looking at this stuff, or even when you're back in the office, say, wait a minute, something's not right. But when you're
those
out
are the
there
ones that get flagged in yellow. Those get flagged in yellow, what you're talking about, Steve.
Right. So it is an important check.
Yeah, that should remain. But adjusting the year back and forth a year or two prior to a previous inspection date, I don't think those should be flagged.
And you know why it's a bigger conversation, Daniel? This is another candidate, if Justin's on the call, that, okay, we put it into the updater tool, which is going to fix 95% of it, and we just continue to let it shake. So I'm not saying get rid of this check. I'm saying get rid of the white and let it only produce what I'm showing in yellow.
The biggest problem you run into when you're out doing re-inspections is everybody was using the estimated date. And some of us go out there with a little bit more experience and we go, so nope, there's no way in the world that's estimated at 2022. That's a 1977 panel. And, Teresa can tell you, we've seen that a number of times. Maybe not so much in architectural stuff, but when it comes to electrical, mechanical stuff, a little bit of detective work and you can get that resolved. But you have some of those, you have a big swing in that date because somebody used an estimated box. And I think that's where all this came from.
Yeah, I think we're all in alignment thinking and saying the same thing. It would just be more thought put into this QC tool or the updater tool to wipe these out. That's it.
Raph has his hand up.
This is a great conversation, and I would say that a majority of time you're really just going to be changing a date. It's not that often that you have to delete. I mean, not that many things get replaced. And if something is newer than the last inspection, to your point, Steve, that's when you're going to do it, because you don't want an inspection event that predates what the new quote unquote install date is going to be. So does everyone understand what an install date is and how that looks in Access? Does anyone raise your hand if you don't? If you're confused, we can show it in a bread file as well. All right. That's good. But that, yeah, that would be a good summary. If your install date is going to be after your last inspection date, your last DCR, then that's when you're really going to be deleting out and creating new. And if you hear something different, please bring it up to another QC manager or to Dean, and that way we can have resolution, because we don't want different standards on different projects.
I know a lot of this came from Brad auto-populates dates a lot of times. So, and a lot of times it'll auto-populate the date of the building was constructed, or it'll estimate a date and throw it in there. And in years past, some assessors thought that that date was probably more accurate than anything they would come up when they never changed it. And then we go back on a reinspection and somebody digs a little deeper and finds the correct date. So that's why a lot of this older data has dates that are incorrect.
Right. And when you see that estimated install date pop up in yellow, usually that's a cyclic date for something that when it should have been replaced. That's why that pops up.
So I know no one said anything, Raph, but I'm still sharing a screen to show it. Right. So here it is behind the scenes, the fact that from the component section side, 2022, but the fact that nothing in Searle Builder is going to fix this legacy piece of it. So it's saying 2020, 2017 event, assessor gives it a new 2023, but that still broke the timeline. Yes.
And Trevor, my last question on this topic is that something we've thought about or talked about putting in the updater tool, the pros and cons of that? Can it be done? Should it be done?
We need to keep bringing it up because I don't have it documented. We're bringing it up now, but to circle back, is it on Justin's list of next version iterations? I don't know. I doubt it. We haven't done it up to this point. In a perfect world, I'd love for someone to have engaged Searle, and I think that it should be a part of their routine roll up. It should not be upon request. They're happy to do it.
That was why we created that tasker in Planner to say what are all the scripts that Searle can run or we've been asking them to run. Because I would like to have a compiled list to say what do we do to incorporate this into Builder on a regular basis, or make sure that it's in ESMS that they fix the bug. But that was the point of that tasker, and we never really took action on it. And I would say if we can add into Planner that activity for Justin, I'm sure he can add it to the updater, and I think that's the best short-term solution.
It's a short term because I know I'd have to find an old email, Daniel, and I need to do more testing. And someone that's doing the SMS stuff could do some more testing and stuff to support Searle and the Army, because the little bit that I did, I found that it does matter. Now, whether you're saying that it's not visible and going to be age-based, it bears much more weight on that install date versus when inspection events are being applied and how they're choosing to determine the age in the remaining service life. Once again, I skimmed it. I didn't dive. Someone needs to dive deep into it. But I think that Searle is using two different data elements based on, and that's not right. I think there's a fundamental flaw, but it's still a hypothesis that hadn't been tested. Well, we're past our time.
Thanks, everyone. Does everyone know where to charge the time for this? Did you cover that, Trevor?
I did not. I've been slacking. JT's not here to tell us.
Yeah, it's the same as last time, the G3800500 Sierra task. That task is going to be closed come Saturday. So this is the last week we'll be able to use it. For future discussions, we'll make sure to have a different project and task number to charge to. There was issue with that task today. It was closed early by accident. It should be resolved. But that's where you'll charge the time for the event. Really appreciate everyone.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.